The call came at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, jarring me awake from the first decent sleep I'd had in weeks. Sarah's number glowed on my phone screen, and for a split second, I felt that familiar flutter of hope that maybe, just maybe, my daughter was finally ready to talk. Instead, her voice cut through the darkness like a blade. "Dad, we need to meet. Tomorrow, noon, the coffee shop on Maple Street." No greeting, no warmth, just cold efficiency, like she was scheduling a business meeting with a stranger. "Sarah, honey, of course, is everything? Just be there." The line went dead. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the phone in my trembling hands. At 52, I'd weathered plenty of storms, lost jobs, a bitter divorce, the death of both my parents. But nothing had prepared me for this civil war with my own flesh and blood. For 8 months now, Sarah had kept me at arm's length, her husband Marcus whispering poison in her ear about what kind of father I supposedly was. 8 months of missed Sunday dinners, of my granddaughter Emma asking her mother why Grandpa Joe never came around anymore. The next morning dragged like molasses. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, practicing what I might say, how I might finally break through whatever wall she'd built around herself. The face staring back at me looked older than my years. Gray stubble I'd forgotten to shave, lines around my eyes that seemed deeper every morning. When had I become this hollowed-out version of myself? I arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early, choosing a corner table where we could talk without every suburban mom with a stroller eavesdropping on our family drama. The place buzzed with the usual lunch crowd, young mothers gossiping over lattes, a few retirees reading newspapers, college kids hunched over laptops. Normal people living normal lives, blissfully unaware that families could implode without warning. Sarah walked in at exactly noon, her blonde hair pulled back in that severe ponytail she'd adopted since marrying Marcus. She'd always been beautiful, got that from her mother, but now there was something brittle about her, like she might shatter if touched wrong. She spotted me immediately, but took her time ordering before making her way over. "Thanks for coming," she said, settling into the chair across from me like she was sitting down to negotiate a hostage exchange. "Sarah, honey, you're my daughter. I'll always—" "We need to talk about Emma's birthday party next weekend." My heart lurched. Emma would be 7, and I'd been dreading this conversation for weeks. Of course, what time should I be there? I got her that art set she wanted, the one with all the— "You're not invited." The words hit me like a physical blow. Around us, the coffee shop hummed with ordinary conversation, but suddenly I couldn't hear anything except the blood rushing in my ears. "What do you mean I'm not invited? She's my granddaughter." Sarah's jaw tightened, and I recognized that look, the same stubborn set she'd had as a little girl when she'd made up her mind about something. "Marcus thinks it's better if you're not there. The other parents, they might have heard things." "Heard what things, Sarah? What exactly has your husband been telling people about me?" She looked away, fidgeting with her wedding ring. "You know what." But I didn't know what. That was the hell of it. For 8 months, I'd been fighting shadows, defending myself against accusations that no one would say out loud. It had started small, Marcus making little comments about my temper, Sarah gradually pulling away from our weekly dinners. Then came the phone calls that went unanswered, the holidays I spent alone, the slow realization that somehow, some way, I'd been painted as the villain in my own daughter's life. "No, I don't know what," I said, keeping my voice level despite the fury building in my chest. "Why don't you enlighten me? What has Marcus convinced you I did?" Sarah finally met my eyes, and what I saw there broke something inside me. Fear. My own daughter was afraid of me. "He told me about the night Mom left, what you did to her, what you used to do to both of us." The world tilted sideways. "What I did to— Sarah, what are you talking about? Your mother left because we grew apart, because we wanted different things. We talked about this when you were in college. You understood. I was protecting you then, making excuses." Her voice cracked, and for a moment she sounded like the little girl who used to crawl into my lap when thunderstorms scared her. Marcus helped me see the truth. The yelling, the way you'd slam doors, how we'd all walk on eggshells when you came home from work. I stared at her, genuinely bewildered. Honey, every father gets frustrated sometimes. Every marriage has its rough patches. But I would never hurt you or your mother. You know that. Do I? She leaned forward, her voice dropping to an urgent whisper. Because Marcus says that abusers always make their victims feel like they're crazy, like they imagined everything. He says the fact that I blocked out how bad it was just proves how traumatic it must have been. This was insane. Marcus, who'd been in our lives for barely 3 years, was now rewriting 25 years of history, turning my memories into lies and my love into abuse. I thought about all the soccer games I'd attended, the bedtime stories I'd read, the nights I'd stayed up helping Sarah with algebra homework. Had Marcus erased all of that? Had my daughter really forgotten who I was? Sarah, look at me. Really look at me. I'm your father. I taught you to ride a bike in the driveway. I walked you down the aisle at your wedding. Do you honestly believe I would hurt you? For just a moment, uncertainty flickered across her face. Then it was gone, replaced by that same cold resolve. I have to protect Emma. Marcus says generational trauma can repeat itself if we're not careful. Generational trauma? I couldn't keep the incredulity out of my voice. Sarah, Emma loves spending time with me. Remember last month when I took her to the zoo? She talked about the penguins for weeks. That was before Marcus explained how predators groom their victims by being extra nice. The word predator hung in the air between us like a loaded gun. I felt something die inside me, some last hope that we could work through this misunderstanding, that my daughter would remember who I really was. Is that what you think I am? A predator? Sarah's silence was answer enough. I pulled out my phone, hands shaking with rage and desperation. You want to know who your father really is? Fine, let's call some people who actually knew us back then. Dad, don't! But I was already dialing. The first number rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Joe, how the hell are you, buddy? Hey, Tom, listen, I need a favor. Can you talk to my daughter for a minute? She has some questions about what kind of father I was. Tom Patterson had been my neighbor for 15 years, had watched Sarah grow up in the house next door. He'd been at every birthday party, every graduation, had borrowed my lawnmower more times than I could count. If anyone knew the truth about my family, it was Tom. I handed the phone to Sarah, who looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. I could hear Tom's booming voice through the speaker, warm with affection. Sarah, honey, how are you? And how's that beautiful little girl of yours? Hi, Mr. Patterson. I'm fine. Your dad was just telling me about Emma's birthday, 7 years old already. Seems like yesterday you were 7, running around our backyard in that little princess costume your dad bought you. Remember that? He must have spent half his paycheck on that thing. I watched Sarah's face as Tom continued, his voice full of genuine fondness. You know, sweetheart, I've got to tell you, your dad's one of the good ones. All those years watching you two together, I never saw anything but love. Hell, half the fathers in the neighborhood could have learned a thing or two from Joe about how to treat their kids. He was always so patient with you, even when you were going through that teenage phase where you hated everything. Sarah's hands were trembling now. Mr. Patterson, did you ever see him lose his temper with me or my mom? Tom's laugh was hearty and immediate. Lose his temper? Your dad? Sarah, honey, your father's got the patience of a saint. I remember when you crashed his car senior year. Remember that? You were so scared to tell him, came crying to my wife because you thought he'll kill you. But when you finally told him, he just hugged you and said he was glad you weren't hurt. Most dads would have blown their stack, but not Joe. I saw Sarah's composure starting to crack, saw the first seeds of doubt taking root. But what about the arguing with my mom? Well, sure, your parents had their disagreements. What couple doesn't? But abuse? Sarah, that's a hell of an accusation. Your dad worshipped the ground your mother walked on, and she knew it. The arguing got worse toward the end, sure, but that's because they were trying to save something that was already broken. Happens to the best of us. Tom's voice softened. Honey, is everything okay? You sound upset. I need to go. Thank you, Mr. Patterson. She handed me back the phone, her face pale as paper. But I wasn't done. I scrolled through my contacts, finding another number. Who are you calling now? Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. Your mother. Sarah's eyes went wide. Dad, no, you can't just... The phone rang once before Linda's familiar voice answered. We'd been divorced for 6 years, but we'd managed to maintain a civil relationship for Sarah's sake. Linda had remarried, moved to Phoenix, started a new life, but she'd never been vindictive about our split. Joe, this is unexpected. Linda, I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm here with Sarah, and she has some questions about our marriage, about me. I was hoping you could clear some things up. There was a pause. Then Linda's voice sharpened with concern. What kind of questions? Sarah, baby, are you there? Hi, Mom. Sarah's voice cracked on the words. Sweetheart, what's wrong? You sound upset. Mom, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Of course, always. Sarah took a shaky breath. Was he abusive? To you? To me? When I was growing up? The silence stretched so long, I thought the call had dropped. Then Linda's voice came through, sharp with shock. Abusive? Sarah Elizabeth, what on earth would make you ask something like that? Marcus thinks what? That your father hit us? Honey, your father never laid a hand on either of us in anger. Not once. Not ever. Linda's voice was getting stronger, more indignant. Sarah, your dad has many faults. Lord knows we had our problems, but being violent isn't one of them. Where is this coming from? But the fighting, the tension when I was a teenager, was two people who'd grown apart trying to figure out how to coexist. Yes, we argued. Yes, your father could be stubborn and moody, especially when work was stressing him out. But abusive? Baby, that's a serious accusation, and it's completely false. I watched Sarah's world crumble in real time. Her face had gone from pale to ashen, and her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold herself upright. Sarah, Linda continued, her voice gentler now, your father wasn't perfect. He worked too much. He could be emotionally distant sometimes, and God knows he had a temper when things weren't going right. But he loved you more than life itself. Still does. I've seen a lot of things in my life, honey, but I've never seen a father love his daughter the way Joe loves you. The phone slipped from Sarah's nerveless fingers, clattering onto the table. Around us, the coffee shop continued its cheerful buzz, oblivious to the fact that a daughter had just realized she'd been living a lie for 8 months. Sarah, my voice came out as a hoarse whisper. Sweetheart, look at me. She raised her eyes, and I saw everything there. Confusion, horror, the dawning realization of what she'd done, what Marcus had convinced her to do. I'm sorry, she whispered. Oh God, Dad, I'm so sorry. But I wasn't ready to forgive, not yet. The damage was too deep, the betrayal too fresh. You kept me away from Emma's birthday because you thought I was a child molester. Dad, please. You've spent 8 months telling people in this town that I'm some kind of monster. Do you have any idea what that's done to my reputation, to my life? Sarah was crying now, ugly sobs that shook her whole body. Marcus was so convincing. He had articles about childhood trauma, about repressed memories. He said the fact that I couldn't remember specific incidents just meant I'd blocked them out. And you believed him over 25 years of your own experience? He said that was normal, that victims always protect their abusers. He made it sound so reasonable, so scientific. He said he was helping me heal. I thought about Marcus. Earnest, soft-spoken Marcus, with his psychology degree and his gentle manner and his absolute certainty about everything. Marcus, who'd never seen me parent a child, never watched me change a diaper or read a bedtime story or stay up all night with a sick kid. Marcus, who'd somehow convinced my daughter that her entire childhood was a lie. Where is he now, Sarah? Does he know you're here? He thinks I'm at the grocery store. She wiped her nose with a napkin. He doesn't like it when I make plans without telling him. That stopped me cold. What do you mean he doesn't like it? He worries about me, about the people I might run into, the things they might say to trigger my trauma responses. Sarah, has Marcus ever stopped you from seeing other people, old friends, family? Her silence was damning. What about your college friends? When's the last time you talked to Jessica or Katie? Marcus says they're not good influences. They don't understand what I've been through. The pieces were clicking into place with horrible clarity. Marcus hadn't just convinced Sarah I was abusive. He'd isolated her from everyone who might contradict his narrative. He'd systematically cut her off from anyone who knew the truth about her childhood, about me, about the kind of father I'd actually been. Sarah, listen to me very carefully. Has Marcus ever told you that other people are lying to you, that they can't be trusted? He says people will always protect abusers because it's easier than facing the truth. Even your own mother? Even Tom Patterson, who watched you grow up? Sarah's face crumpled as the full scope of Marcus's manipulation became clear. Oh God, what have I done? You've been brainwashed by a man who wanted to control you. My anger was giving way to something else now. A cold, calculated fury at the man who'd stolen my daughter's memories and replaced them with lies. Sarah, this isn't your fault, but we need to figure out how to fix it. I can't go home, she whispered. How can I face him, knowing what he's done? How can I tell Emma that everything I've said about you is wrong? One step at a time, sweetheart. First, you need to understand that Marcus is the one with the problem, not you, not me. This is textbook emotional abuse, isolation, gaslighting, making you question your own memories and experiences. But he was so concerned about me, so caring. Abusers often are, especially in the beginning. They have to be, to get you to trust them enough to let them remake your reality. Sarah stared down at her hands, wedding ring catching the afternoon light. I've destroyed everything, haven't I? My relationship with you, Emma's relationship with you, the whole family. Nothing that can't be rebuilt, if you're willing to do the work. I don't know how. I don't know how to go back to Marcus and pretend everything's normal. I don't know how to explain to Emma why Grandpa Joe is suddenly allowed around again. I don't know how to face the other parents at school, the neighbors, everyone I've been telling these stories to. I reached across the table and took her hand, marveling at how small it felt. She was still my little girl, despite everything. We'll figure it out together. But first, you need to decide what you want your life to look like. Do you want to stay married to a man who convinced you to cut off your own father? Who's been controlling who you see and what you think? I don't know. I can't think straight anymore. For months, I've been so sure about everything, and now I feel like I don't know anything. That's what gaslighting does. It makes you doubt your own judgment. But your judgment was right for 25 years, Sarah. trust that. We sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of 8 months of lost time settling between us. Then Sarah spoke, her voice stronger than it had been all afternoon. I want Emma to know her grandfather. The real one, not the monster Marcus invented. Then we start there, one step at a time. Sarah nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Can you help me? I don't know how to untangle this mess. Of course I can. But Sarah, you need to understand something. This is going to be hard. Marcus isn't going to just let you walk away from the story he's built. He's invested in you believing these things about me, about yourself. When you challenge that, he's going to fight back. What do you mean? I mean, he's going to try to convince you that you're having another episode, that your trauma is making you confused. He's going to tell you that I'm manipulating you, just like he said I did when you were a child. He might even escalate, become more controlling, more demanding. Fear flickered across Sarah's face. What if he's right? What if I am just confused? I pulled out my phone again, scrolling to the photos. Look at this. The picture had been taken at Emma's 4th birthday party, before Marcus entered our lives. Sarah was laughing at something I'd said while Emma sat on my lap, chocolate cake smeared across her face. We looked like what we were, a happy family. Do we look like an abuser and his victim to you? Sarah stared at the photo for a long time, tears streaming down her face. No, we look happy. Because we were happy, not perfect, but happy. And we can be again if you're brave enough to fight for it. I'm scared, Dad. I know you are, but you're stronger than you think. You're my daughter, after all. For the first time in 8 months, Sarah smiled. It was a small, tentative thing, but it was real. What do I do first? First, you go home and you don't tell Marcus about this conversation. Not yet. You need time to process what you've learned, to remember who you really are before he tries to convince you otherwise. But what about Emma's birthday party? We'll deal with that when the time comes. For now, just focus on remembering the truth. Look through old photos, call your mom, talk to people who knew us before Marcus. Rebuild your memories with facts instead of his fiction. Sarah nodded, looking more determined than she had all afternoon. And then? Then you decide what kind of life you want, one built on truth or one built on lies. As we prepared to leave, Sarah turned to me one last time. Dad, I know I have no right to ask this, but do you think you can forgive me? I studied her face, seeing echoes of the little girl who used to run to me when she was hurt, who trusted me completely before the world taught her that trust was dangerous. Sarah, you're my daughter. I've already forgiven you. The question is whether you can forgive yourself. She hugged me then, fierce and desperate, like she was trying to make up for 8 months of lost embraces in a single moment. I held her tight, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo, feeling the solid reality of my child in my arms. I love you, Dad. I never stopped, even when Marcus made me think. I know, sweetheart, I know. As I watched her walk to her car, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months, hope. It would be a long road back, full of difficult conversations and painful realizations. Marcus wouldn't give up his control easily, and Sarah would have to find the strength to rebuild not just our relationship, but her entire sense of self. But she'd taken the first step. She'd remembered who I really was, who we really were together. And sometimes, remembering the truth is all it takes to start building a new future. My phone buzzed with a text message as I got into my truck. It was from Sarah. Thank you for not giving up on me. I smiled, typing back, never. I'm your father. It's not in my job description. The drive home took me through the suburbs where I'd raised Sarah, past the playground where I'd pushed her on swings, the school where I'd dropped her off every morning. For months, these familiar sights had felt like accusations, reminders of a daughter who thought I was a monster. Now they felt like validation, proof of a life lived with love despite its imperfections. There would be more conversations, more tears, more difficult moments ahead. Marcus would fight to keep his hold on Sarah's reality. The community that had heard his version of events would need to hear the truth. Emma would need careful explanation about why Grandpa Joe was suddenly back in her life. But sitting in my driveway, looking at the house where I'd raised my daughter with all the patience and love I could muster, I felt something I hadn't felt in 8 months. I felt like a father again. The truth had a power that even the most convincing lies couldn't match. And my daughter, my strong, smart, beautiful daughter, had found her way back to it. Back to me. It was a start, and sometimes a start is everything. 3 days later, my phone rang at 6 a.m. Sarah's number appeared on the screen, but this time her voice was different. Stronger, clearer, like she'd found something she'd lost. "Dad, it's me. Marcus left for his conference this morning. Can you come over? Emma's been asking about you, and I think it's time she knew the truth about her grandfather." I was already reaching for my keys. "I'll be right there." As I drove through the morning sunlight toward my daughter's house, toward my granddaughter who was about to meet the real me instead of the monster her stepfather had invented, I thought about the power of truth to heal even the deepest wounds. It wouldn't be easy. There would be more battles ahead, more difficult conversations, more moments when doubt crept in. But we'd cross the hardest bridge, the one between lies and truth, between fear and love. And on the other side waited my family, ready to remember who we really were. The house looked exactly the same from the outside, white colonial with blue shutters, the garden Sarah had planted when they first moved in, now mature and blooming. But as I walked up the driveway, everything felt different. For 8 months, this place had been forbidden territory, a fortress where my own granddaughter lived but couldn't see me. Now, Sarah was opening the door before I could even knock. "She's having breakfast," Sarah whispered, leading me into the hallway. "I haven't told her you're coming. I thought maybe we should start slow." Emma's voice drifted from the kitchen, chattering about something she'd seen on a nature documentary. At 6 years old, she had Sarah's blonde hair and my late mother's green eyes, and a curiosity about the world that reminded me of myself at that age. I'd missed so much of her growing up. Lost teeth, new words, bedtime stories, the 1,000 small moments that make up a childhood. "Mommy, who was that at the door?" Emma called out. Sarah looked at me, uncertainty flickering across her face. "Are you ready for this?" I nodded, though my heart was hammering against my ribs. How do you reintroduce yourself to a granddaughter who's been told you're dangerous? How do you bridge 8 months of absence without traumatizing a child who's caught in the middle of adult problems she couldn't possibly understand? We walked into the kitchen together, and Emma looked up from her cereal bowl with those bright green eyes. For a moment, she didn't recognize me. I'd lost weight since she had last seen me, and I was probably grayer around the temples. Then her face lit up with the pure, uncomplicated joy that only children can manage. "Grandpa Joe!" She scrambled down from her chair and launched herself at me with the kind of full-body hug that children give when they haven't seen someone they love in a long time. I caught her, lifting her up and spinning her around the way I used to when she was smaller. She felt heavier now, longer-limbed, and I realized with a pang how much growing she'd done without me there to witness it. "Hey there, kiddo. I missed you so much." "Where have you been? Mommy said you were sick, but then Marcus said you had to go away for a long time, and I didn't understand why you couldn't call me." I looked over Emma's head at Sarah, who had gone pale. So that was the story they'd told her. First that I was sick, then that I'd abandoned her. The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. "Well, there was some confusion, sweetheart, some grown-up problems that got all tangled up, but I'm here now, and I've missed you terribly." "Did you bring me anything?" Emma asked with the delightful selfishness of childhood. I laughed, reaching into my jacket pocket. Actually, I did. I've been saving this for you. It was a small, carved wooden elephant I'd found at a craft fair months ago, painted in bright blues and greens. Emma gasped with delight, turning it over in her small hands. "It's beautiful. Can I name him?" "Of course you can. What would you like to call him?" "Peanut, because elephants eat peanuts, right?" "That's perfect." Sarah was watching this exchange with tears in her eyes, and I could see her remembering all the times she'd witnessed scenes just like this, me bringing Emma little gifts, the two of us creating our own special world of jokes and shared secrets. "Emma," Sarah said softly, "why don't you take Peanut upstairs and find a special place for him in your room? Grandpa Joe and I need to talk for a few minutes." "But I want to show him my new drawings, and I learned to do a cartwheel." "You can show me everything," I promised. "I'm not going anywhere." After Emma thundered upstairs, her footsteps echoing through the house, Sarah and I sat at the kitchen table where I'd shared so many meals over the years. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept much since our conversation at the coffee shop. "She was heartbroken when you stopped coming around," Sarah said quietly. "She kept asking why Grandpa Joe didn't love her anymore. I had to tell her something." "So you told her I abandoned her?" "Marcus said it was better than the truth. He said children couldn't handle knowing that someone they loved was dangerous." The kitchen felt smaller than I remembered, crowded with ghosts of family dinners and birthday celebrations. I could see Emma's artwork stuck to the refrigerator with magnets, and it hurt to realize how many pictures I'd missed, how many proud moments Sarah had shared with Marcus instead of me. "Sarah, we need to talk about what happens next, with Marcus." Her face tightened. "I've been thinking about that, non-stop, actually. And I can't keep living like this. Now that I know the truth, I can't pretend anymore. But I'm scared of what he'll do when he realizes I'm not buying his story anymore." "Has he ever been violent with you?" "No, never. But he gets intense. When he thinks I'm not seeing things clearly, he gets this look in his eyes, like he's disappointed in me, like I'm letting him down by not being strong enough to face my trauma. He'll bring out articles and books, surround me with evidence until I feel crazy for questioning him." I thought about the psychological warfare Marcus had been waging on my daughter, the systematic destruction of her confidence in her own memories and judgment. It was sophisticated abuse, dressed up in the language of therapy and healing. What about Emma? How has he been with her? Good, mostly. He's never been cruel to her, but he's been shaping her understanding of you. Little comments about how some grandfathers aren't safe, how she's better off without certain people in her life. He's been preparing her to forget you. The thought of Marcus poisoning my granddaughter's mind against me made my vision blur with rage. But I forced myself to stay calm, to think strategically rather than emotionally. "Sarah, I think you need to talk to someone, a real therapist, not Marcus, someone who can help you process what's happened and figure out your next steps." I've been thinking the same thing, but Marcus chose our couples counselor, our family doctor, even Emma's pediatrician. Everyone we see professionally is someone he found, someone who already knows his version of our story. Then we find you someone new, someone who doesn't know Marcus, who can give you an objective perspective on your situation. Emma's footsteps came pounding down the stairs, and she burst into the kitchen with her arms full of drawings and school papers. "Look, Grandpa Joe, this is the butterfly I drew in art class, and this is my story about the zoo, and this is my math homework that I got all right." For the next hour, I sat with my granddaughter and caught up on 8 months of her life. She showed me her loose teeth, demonstrated her cartwheel in the backyard, and chattered about her friends at school and her favorite TV shows. It was ordinary and precious and everything I'd been missing. But underneath the joy of being with Emma again, I was watching Sarah. She seemed lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. When Emma told a story about something funny that happened at school, Sarah laughed, really laughed, for the first time I'd seen in years. It was like watching my daughter emerge from a long, dark tunnel. Around 10:30, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text message. Her face immediately went tense as she read it. "Marcus?" I asked. She nodded. "He's checking in from his conference, wants to know what I'm doing today." "What are you going to tell him?" "I don't know. I've never been good at lying to him. He always seems to know when I'm not telling the truth." "That's because he's trained you to be transparent with him while keeping secrets from everyone else. It's another control tactic." Sarah stared at her phone for a long moment, then typed back, "Just hanging around the house with Emma. Nothing special." "Mommy, should I tell Daddy Marcus that Grandpa Joe is here?" Emma asked innocently. Sarah and I exchanged a look. "No, sweetheart, let's keep this as a surprise for now, okay? Daddy Marcus has been working very hard, and we don't want to bother him." Emma nodded solemnly, accepting the adult logic without question. But I could see the wheels turning in her 6-year-old mind, trying to understand why Grandpa Joe's visit was a secret. As the morning wore on, I helped Emma with a puzzle while Sarah made lunch. It felt so normal, so right, that I kept forgetting about the minefield we were navigating. This was how things should be. 3 generations of family spending time together, sharing meals and stories, and the comfortable rhythm of people who love each other. But reality crashed back when Sarah's phone rang just after noon. Marcus's name appeared on the screen, and Sarah's whole body went rigid. "I have to answer it," she whispered. "He'll get suspicious if I don't." She stepped into the living room, but I could hear her side of the conversation through the open door. "Hi, honey. How's the conference going?" A pause, then, "No, nothing interesting. Just a quiet morning at home." Another pause, longer this time. "Emma's fine. She's working on a puzzle in the kitchen." I saw Sarah's shoulders tense. What kind of errand? I wasn't planning to go anywhere today. The conversation continued for several more minutes, with Sarah's responses getting shorter and more strained. When she finally hung up, she looked shaken. "He wants me to drive to the mall and pick up a shirt he ordered. Says he needs it for tomorrow's presentation. Can't he pick it up himself when he gets back?" That's what I said. But he insists it has to be today, that the store might not hold it if I wait. Sarah rubbed her temples. This is what he does. He gives me these tasks, these little errands that feel urgent but don't really make sense. I think he just wants to know where I am, what I'm doing. "Don't go." I have to. If I don't, he'll want to know why. He'll ask questions I'm not ready to answer. I could see the trap Marcus had built for my daughter, a web of small demands and constant check-ins that kept her under surveillance, even when he wasn't physically present. Every deviation from his expectations would require explanation, and explanations led to more questions, more scrutiny. Then take Emma with you. Make it a quick trip. But Sarah, you need to start thinking about an exit strategy. This level of control isn't normal in a healthy marriage. I know that now, but knowing it and figuring out what to do about it are 2 different things. Emma's enrolled in school here. We have a mortgage. All our friends are his friends. I can't just pack up and leave. No, but you can start making plans, quietly. Emma looked up from her puzzle, sensing the tension in the room. "Are we going somewhere, Mommy?" "Just a quick trip to the mall, sweetheart. Grandpa Joe needs to go home now, but maybe he can come back another day." The disappointment on Emma's face was heartbreaking, but I wanted to show him my room and my new bike. "Another time, kiddo," I said, kneeling down to her level. "But I promise it won't be 8 months this time, okay?" "Okay. Will you come to my birthday party? It's next weekend." Sarah and I looked at each other over Emma's head. The birthday party that had started this whole conversation, that I'd been uninvited from because Marcus convinced Sarah I was dangerous. "Well, see, sweetheart," Sarah said carefully, "there might be some changes to the party plans." After I left, I drove around town aimlessly for an hour, trying to process everything that had happened. Seeing Emma again, watching Sarah begin to emerge from Marcus's psychological control, feeling like a father and grandfather again after months of exile. It was overwhelming, but I was also worried. Sarah was right to be scared of Marcus's reaction when he inevitably discovered that she was questioning his narrative. Men like Marcus didn't give up control easily, and they often escalated when they felt their power slipping away. I decided to call Tom Patterson. If anyone could help me think through this situation strategically, it was Tom. He'd been a family therapist before retiring and had seen his share of complicated family dynamics. "Joe, how'd it go with Sarah yesterday?" "Better than I hoped. She's starting to remember the truth. But Tom, I think she's in more trouble than she realizes." I filled him in on everything Sarah had told me about Marcus's behavior, the isolation tactics, the constant surveillance disguised as concern. "That's textbook emotional abuse," Tom confirmed. "The question is, what's Sarah prepared to do about it? Because once Marcus realizes he's losing control of the narrative, things could get ugly fast." "That's what I'm afraid of. Sarah's scared, but she's also got nowhere to go. He systematically cut her off from her support system. Except she's got you now, and Emma needs to see that her grandfather isn't the monster Marcus painted him as. But Joe, you need to be careful here. Don't push Sarah too hard, too fast. She's been psychologically conditioned to doubt her own judgment. If you come on too strong, she might retreat back into Marcus's version of reality." That evening, I got a text from Sarah. "Made it home from the mall. M called twice during the 45-minute trip. Says he was just checking that we were safe, but it felt like monitoring. Trying to act normal, but feel like I'm wearing a mask." I texted back, "You're doing great. Just take it one day at a time. Emma keeps asking when you can come back. I told her maybe this weekend. What about the birthday party? Still thinking about that. Part of me wants to uninvite Marcus and just have family, but I know that would cause a huge fight. Whatever you decide, I'll support. But Sarah, Emma deserves to have her grandfather at her birthday." I know. I'm just scared of the fallout. The next few days passed in a strange limbo. Sarah and I texted regularly, but carefully. She was worried Marcus might check her phone. She told me about small moments of clarity, memories of our relationship that contradicted everything Marcus had convinced her to believe. But she also described the growing anxiety she felt about maintaining the pretense that nothing had changed. "I feel like I'm going crazy," she texted Wednesday night. "Yesterday, I found myself agreeing with him about something, and for a moment I wondered if I imagined our whole conversation at the coffee shop. It's like he's rewired my brain." That's the gaslighting talking. Trust your memories. Trust what Tom and your mother told you. The truth doesn't change just because someone convinces you to doubt it. How do I know what's real anymore? Start a journal. Write down everything you remember about your childhood, about our relationship, about the things Marcus has said to you. When you see it all written out, the patterns become clearer. Thursday brought a development I hadn't expected. Sarah called while I was at work, her voice tight with panic. "Dad, Marcus is coming home early. His conference got canceled and he'll be here tonight instead of Saturday." "Why are you panicking? You haven't done anything wrong." "Because I've been different since we talked. Happier, more relaxed. What if he notices? What if he starts asking questions about why my mood has changed?" "Sarah, take a deep breath. You're allowed to have good days. You're allowed to be happy. If he questions that, it tells you everything you need to know about the kind of marriage you're in." "But what about Emma's birthday? We haven't figured out what to do about the party." I'd been thinking about this for days, and I'd come to a decision. Invite me, officially. Tell Marcus you've been thinking about what's best for Emma, and you've decided she needs her grandfather in her life. He'll lose his mind. Maybe. Or maybe he'll realize that his story is falling apart and back down. But Sarah, you can't keep living in fear of his reactions. That's not a marriage, that's hostage situation. There was a long pause. What if he threatens to leave, to take Emma? Then you'll know where you stand, and you'll deal with it. But Sarah, you can't make decisions based on his threats forever. At some point, you have to decide what kind of life you want. That night, Marcus came home to a wife who was trying desperately to act normal while her entire worldview crumbled around her. Sarah later told me it was the longest evening of her life. Making dinner, helping Emma with homework, listening to Marcus complain about his canceled conference, all while fighting the urge to scream that everything she thought she knew was a lie. But she made it through. And Friday morning, while Marcus was at work and Emma was at school, she did something that took more courage than she'd shown in months. She called a therapist. Not one of Marcus's approved providers, but a woman she found through her own research, Dr. Patricia Wynn, who specialized in family trauma and psychological abuse. Sarah made an appointment for the following Tuesday, when Marcus would be at work and couldn't question where she was going. "I need to talk to someone neutral," Sarah told me when she called to share the news. "Someone who doesn't know Marcus, who can help me figure out if I'm seeing things clearly. I'm proud of you, sweetheart. That takes real strength. I'm terrified. What if she thinks I'm crazy? What if she agrees with Marcus that I'm confused about my childhood? Then you'll find another therapist." But Sarah, the fact that you're questioning Marcus's version of events doesn't make you crazy. It makes you healthy. Friday evening brought the confrontation I'd been dreading. Sarah texted me at 7 p.m. "I told him about the birthday party, about inviting you. It's bad." I called immediately, but the phone went straight to voicemail. I tried again an hour later with the same result. By 9 p.m., I was ready to drive over there, but Tom Patterson talked me out of it. "If you show up now, you'll just make things worse," he said. "Marcus will use it as evidence that you're unstable, that Sarah was right to keep you away. Give her space to handle this herself." It was the longest night of my life. I kept imagining scenarios: Marcus becoming violent, Sarah backing down and accepting his version of reality again, Emma caught in the middle of a screaming match between her mother and stepfather. But Saturday morning brought a text that made my heart soar. "Party is tomorrow at 2 p.m. You're invited." It got ugly, but I didn't back down. "Can't talk now, but wanted you to know." Sunday dawned bright and clear, the kind of perfect autumn day that makes you grateful to be alive. I spent the morning wrapping Emma's presents, the art set I'd bought months ago, plus a few new additions I'd picked up during the week. A children's book about elephants to go with the wooden one I'd given her, a puzzle featuring zoo animals, and a small jewelry box where she could keep her treasures. I arrived at Sarah's house at exactly 2 p.m., carrying my gifts and trying to ignore the knot of anxiety in my stomach. I had no idea what to expect. Would other parents be there? Had Sarah told them the truth about why I'd been absent? Would Marcus try to make a scene in front of everyone? The first thing I noticed was that there were no other cars in the driveway. Usually, Emma's birthday parties were crowded affairs, with a dozen kids from school and their parents. This felt different, smaller, more intimate. Sarah opened the door before I could knock, and I could see immediately that she'd been crying. But there was something different about her posture, something stronger and more determined than I'd seen in months. "Hi, Dad. Come on in." The house was decorated with balloons and streamers, and I could hear Emma's laughter coming from the backyard. But it was quiet, too quiet for a typical birthday party. "Where is everyone?" I asked. "Marcus uninvited them." Sarah's voice was flat, emotionless. "Said he didn't want drama around Emma's special day. Said it would be better to keep things small this year." "Where is he?" "Upstairs, sulking. He's barely spoken to me since Friday night, and he's been treating Emma like she's done something wrong." Sarah's voice cracked. "She keeps asking why Daddy Marcus is mad at her." My anger flared, but I forced it down. This wasn't the time for confrontation. This was Emma's day, and she deserved better than adults fighting over her birthday cake. "Is she okay?" "She's confused, but trying to be happy. Come on, she's been waiting for you." We walked through the house to the backyard, where Emma was sitting at a picnic table that had been decorated with a princess-themed tablecloth and matching plates. She looked small and a little lost, surrounded by decorations for a party that only 3 people would attend. "Grandpa Joe!" She jumped up and ran to me, and I scooped her up in a bear hug. "Happy birthday, beautiful girl. 7 years old. You're practically grown up." "Look at my decorations. Mommy and I put them up this morning. Daddy Marcus said we didn't need so many balloons, but I like them anyway. I looked over Emma's head at Sarah, who was fighting back tears. This little girl's birthday had become a battlefield, and she was too young to understand why. I think the decorations are perfect. And I brought you some presents! For the next hour, we did our best to give Emma a proper birthday celebration. We played games in the backyard, ate cake and ice cream, and opened presents. Emma was delighted with everything I'd brought, especially the jewelry box, which played a tinkling melody when she opened it. "Now I have somewhere special to keep Peanut," she announced, carefully placing the wooden elephant inside. But the shadow of Marcus's absence hung over everything. Emma kept looking toward the house, clearly wondering why her stepfather wasn't joining the fun. And Sarah was wound so tight I thought she might snap at any moment. Around 4 p.m., Marcus finally made an appearance. He came out to the backyard wearing jeans and a polo shirt, his expression carefully neutral. He'd clearly decided to play the reasonable adult who was graciously tolerating an uncomfortable situation. "Happy birthday, Emma," he said, giving her a perfunctory hug. "Did you have a nice party?" "It was great! Look what Grandpa Joe gave me!" Emma held up the jewelry box, and I watched Marcus's jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. "That's very nice, sweetie. Why don't you take your new things inside and get ready for your bath?" "But I want to show Grandpa Joe my room." "Another time, Emma. Grandpa Joe needs to go home now." The dismissal was clear, and I could see Sarah wrestling with whether to challenge it. Emma's face fell, and I felt that familiar rage building in my chest. "Actually," I said carefully, "I'd love to see Emma's room. It's been a while since I've been upstairs." Marcus's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I think Emma's had enough excitement for one day. She gets overstimulated when there's too much activity." "I'm not overstimulated," Emma protested. "I'm not even tired." "Emma, listen to Daddy Marcus," Sarah said quietly, and I could hear the defeat in her voice. This was the moment of truth. I could back down, accept Marcus's authority in his own house, and preserve the fragile peace that had allowed me to attend the party at all. Or I could stand my ground and risk undoing all the progress Sarah had made. But looking at Emma's disappointed face, thinking about 8 months of missed moments and forced separation, I made my choice. "You know what, Emma? How about Grandpa Joe takes you to get ice cream sometime this weekend instead? Just the two of us, and you can tell me all about your room then." It was a small act of defiance, but Marcus heard the challenge in it. His smile disappeared entirely. "I don't think that's a good idea. Emma's schedule is very busy with school and activities. I'm sure we can find time for ice cream with her grandfather." The tension in the backyard was thick enough to cut. Emma looked back and forth between the adults, sensing the undercurrents but not understanding them. Sarah stood frozen, caught between her husband and her father, probably wondering if this moment would undo everything. Then Marcus played his trump card. "Sarah, I think we need to discuss this privately. Emma, why don't you go inside and watch TV for a few minutes?" "But now, Emma." My granddaughter looked at me with confusion and disappointment before trudging toward the house, and I realized that no matter what happened next, she would remember this moment, her 7th birthday, when the adults in her life turned her celebration into a power struggle. As soon as Emma was inside, Marcus turned to face me directly for the first time in 8 months. "I think it's time for you to leave." "Marcus," Sarah said quietly, "he's my father, Emma's grandfather. And I'm her stepfather and your husband. This is my house, and I'm asking you to leave." I looked at Sarah, who was pale but standing straighter than I'd seen her in months. This was her moment, the choice between the man who'd convinced her I was a monster and the father who'd loved her unconditionally for 28 years. "No," she said quietly. Marcus turned to stare at her. What did you say? I said, no, he's not leaving. This is Emma's birthday, and she wants her grandfather here. Sarah, we discussed this. We agreed that it was better for Emma if you decided. You convinced me to agree by making me believe things that weren't true. But I remember now, Marcus. I remember who my father really is. The mask finally slipped from Marcus's face, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. You're having an episode, Sarah. The stress of seeing him again is triggering your trauma responses. You need to go inside and take your medication. I'm not having an episode. I'm having clarity. This is exactly what I warned you about. He's manipulating you, just like he did when you were a child. Can't you see what he's doing? But Sarah was shaking her head, and for the first time in months, she looked completely sure of herself. The only person who's been manipulating me is you. The words hung in the air like a bomb that had just detonated. Marcus's face went through a series of expressions: shock, anger, calculation, before settling on something that made my blood run cold. If that's how you feel, maybe I should call my lawyer. Discuss custody arrangements for Emma. It was a threat designed to terrify Sarah back into submission, and I could see it hit home. Her face went white, and she took a step backward. You can't do that. Emma's not your biological daughter. But I've been her father for 3 years. I've provided for her, cared for her, been a stable presence in her life, while her grandfather has been absent and her mother has been struggling with psychological issues. The threat was clear. If Sarah didn't fall back in line, Marcus would paint her as an unfit mother and try to gain custody of Emma. It was a nuclear option, and he was prepared to use it. But something had changed in my daughter over the past week. Instead of crumbling under the threat, she stood taller. Go ahead, call your lawyer. But before you do, maybe you should know that I'm calling mine on Monday, and a therapist, and maybe the police, to ask them about the legality of psychological abuse. You're being ridiculous, Sarah. I've never laid a hand on you. Abuse isn't just physical, Marcus. And I have 8 months of texts and emails where you isolated me from my family, controlled my movements, and convinced me to doubt my own memories. I'm sure a judge would find them very interesting. I watched my daughter reclaim her power in real time, and I'd never been prouder of her in my life. She was scared. I could see her hands shaking, but she wasn't backing down. Marcus looked between Sarah and me, calculating his options. Finally, he shrugged with elaborate casualness. Fine, have your little reunion. But don't come crying to me when he disappoints you again. Leopards don't change their spots. He walked toward the house, then turned back at the door. I'll be packing some things. I think I need some space to figure out whether this marriage is worth saving. After he disappeared inside, Sarah collapsed into one of the lawn chairs, her whole body shaking with adrenaline. Did I just blow up my life? She whispered. You just saved it, I said, kneeling beside her chair. Sarah, what you just did took incredible courage. I'm terrified. What if he really does try to take Emma? What if I can't support us on my own? What if… Hey, I took her hands in mine. One crisis at a time. Right now, Emma's inside wondering why her birthday party turned into a war zone. Let's focus on her. We went inside to find Emma curled up on the living room couch, clutching the wooden elephant I'd given her earlier. She looked up when we entered, her green eyes wide with confusion. Why was Daddy Marcus yelling? Did I do something wrong? Sarah sat down next to her daughter and pulled her into a hug. No, baby, you didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes grown-ups have disagreements, but that's not your fault. Is Daddy Marcus going away? Sarah looked at me over Emma's head, and I could see her weighing how much truth a 7-year-old could handle. Daddy Marcus needs some time to think about things, but no matter what happens, you'll always be loved and taken care of. Can Grandpa Joe stay for dinner? It was such a simple request, but it carried the weight of everything we'd been fighting for. I looked at Sarah, who managed a smile for the first time all day. I think that's a wonderful idea. Why don't we order pizza and have a real celebration? As Emma ran to get the pizza delivery menus from the kitchen drawer, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Marcus appeared with a suitcase in his hand, his expression carefully composed. I'll be staying at a hotel for a few days. We can discuss arrangements for my things later. Marcus, Sarah started, but he held up a hand. I think we've said enough for now. I'll call you this week. He kissed Emma goodbye, ruffled her hair with genuine affection, and walked out the front door without another word to either Sarah or me. The house felt different immediately, lighter, like a pressure valve had been released. "Is he really gone?" Emma asked, appearing in the kitchen doorway with the pizza menus. "For now," Sarah said. "Are you okay with that?" Emma considered this with the seriousness that children bring to important questions. "I think so. He was making everyone sad, and now Grandpa Joe can come over again." That evening, we ordered pizza and watched a movie together on the living room couch, 3 generations of family reconnecting after months of forced separation. Emma fell asleep between us during the second movie, her head on my shoulder and her feet in Sarah's lap. "What happens now?" Sarah whispered, careful not to wake Emma. "Now you build a new life, one based on truth instead of manipulation." "I'm scared. I won't be strong enough to do it alone." "You won't be alone. You have me, you have your mother, you have friends who care about you. And Sarah, you're stronger than you think. What you did today proves that." "What if I made a mistake? What if Marcus was right about some things?" "Sarah, look at Emma. Look how peaceful she is right now. When's the last time she fell asleep like this when Marcus was in the house?" Sarah studied her daughter's face, seeing what I saw, the relaxed features of a child who felt safe and loved. "She's been walking on eggshells too, hasn't she? I just couldn't see it because I was so focused on managing Marcus's moods. Kids pick up on tension, even when adults think they're hiding it. Emma's been living with the stress of a household where everyone was afraid to upset the person in charge. I can't believe I let it go on so long. I can't believe I let him convince me that you—" Sarah's voice broke. "Hey, you were a victim too. Marcus is very good at what he does. He probably studied your vulnerabilities, figured out exactly how to make you doubt yourself. The therapist I'm seeing on Tuesday, Dr. Wynn, she specializes in this kind of psychological manipulation. I found her website, and reading about emotional abuse was like reading the story of my marriage." "Good. You need someone professional to help you process what happened and figure out how to move forward." Emma stirred in her sleep, mumbling something about elephants and birthday cake. Sarah smoothed her daughter's hair with gentle fingers. "I want to tell her the truth about you. Age-appropriate truth, but still the truth. She deserves to know that her grandfather isn't dangerous, that the reason you've been gone is because of lies, not because of anything you did. Are you ready for the questions that will bring up? About Marcus? About why someone would lie about something like that?" "I think so. She's smart, and she's already figured out that something wasn't right. Kids have good instincts about people." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching Emma sleep and processing everything that had changed in a single afternoon. Outside, the sun was setting on what felt like the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. "Dad?" Sarah's voice was soft, uncertain. "Yes, sweetheart? Do you think you can forgive me? Really forgive me, not just say it because you think you should?" I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw the little girl who used to crawl into my lap when she had bad dreams, the teenager who trusted me with her secrets, the young woman who asked me to walk her down the aisle because she couldn't imagine anyone else doing it. "Sarah, there's nothing to forgive. You were protecting your daughter the only way you knew how, based on information you believed was true. That's what good mothers do." "But I hurt you. I kept Emma away from you. I let other people think terrible things about you." "And I'm hurt, but I'm also proud of you for finding your way back to the truth. That took courage, and it took love." "I missed you so much. Even when I thought you were dangerous, I missed talking to you, missed your advice, missed having you in my life." "I missed you too, both of you. But we're together now, and that's what matters." Emma woke up around 9 o'clock, groggy and confused about where she was. We carried her upstairs to her room, where she showed me all the things I'd missed: new books, artwork from school, photos of friends and activities. Her room was a shrine to childhood interests: horses and butterflies in the color purple, stuffed animals arranged carefully on her bed. "Grandpa Joe, are you going to come to my school play next month? I'm a butterfly." "I wouldn't miss it for the world, kiddo." "Promise?" "I promise." After Emma was tucked into bed, Sarah and I sat at her kitchen table with cups of coffee, planning the immediate future. She would see Dr. Wynn on Tuesday, would meet with a divorce attorney by the end of the week, would start the process of untangling her life from Marcus's control. "It's going to be hard," she admitted. "Financial, emotional, practical. I haven't been independent in 3 years." "You don't have to do it all at once. And you're not starting from zero. You have education, work experience, people who care about you." "What about Emma? How do I explain that her stepfather isn't coming back?" "Honestly, kids are more resilient than we think, especially when they feel safe and loved." As I prepared to leave that night, Emma called down from her bedroom. "Grandpa Joe, are you coming back tomorrow?" "Not tomorrow, sweetheart, but very soon." "Good, I have lots more things to show you." Standing on Sarah's front porch, I looked back at the house where my daughter was beginning to rebuild her life, and my granddaughter was learning that her grandfather wasn't a monster after all. It would be a long journey: divorce proceedings, therapy sessions, the slow work of rebuilding trust and confidence. But we'd taken the first steps, and that was everything. 6 months later, I stood in the same backyard where Emma's 7th birthday party had changed everything, watching my granddaughter chase butterflies with the kind of carefree joy that comes from feeling completely safe. Sarah was inside, getting ready for her first day at her new job, a marketing position she'd landed after months of rebuilding her professional confidence. The divorce had been finalized 3 weeks earlier. Marcus had initially fought for custody, but when Sarah's attorney presented evidence of his psychological manipulation, emails, text messages, testimony from Dr. Wynn about emotional abuse patterns, he'd back down. He was allowed supervised visits with Emma, which she seemed to enjoy without the weight of adult tensions hanging over them. "Grandpa Joe, look!" Emma called out, pointing to a monarch butterfly that had landed on the garden fence. "It's just like in my school play." "Beautiful," I called back, "just like you." Sarah emerged from the house, professional but nervous in her new dress and carefully applied makeup. "How do I look?" "Like someone who's ready to take on the world." "I'm terrified," she admitted. "It's been 3 years since I had a real job, since I made decisions without asking someone else's permission first." "You're going to do great. Trust yourself." "When did I stop doing that? Trusting myself, I mean." "Probably gradually, so slowly you didn't notice it happening. But you're doing it again now, and that's what matters." Emma ran over to us, breathless with excitement. "Mommy, you look so pretty. Are you going to work now?" "I am, but Grandpa Joe will stay with you until Mrs. Henderson gets here. And then, after school, you can tell me all about your day." "Will you like working?" Sarah considered the question seriously. "I think I will. It feels good to be useful again, to contribute something meaningful." After Sarah left for her first day, Emma and I settled into the kitchen for breakfast. She'd grown taller over the past 6 months, more confident and articulate. The shadow that had haunted her eyes during those difficult months with Marcus was gone, replaced by the natural curiosity and joy of a healthy child. "Grandpa Joe, why did Daddy Marcus have to leave?" It was a question she asked periodically, and I'd learned to answer it honestly but simply. Sometimes grown-ups don't agree about important things, and they decide they can't live together anymore. But that doesn't mean anyone stopped loving you. "I know, Mommy explained that too. But I'm glad you didn't have to leave." "Me too, kiddo, me too." Looking at my granddaughter, thinking about my daughter starting fresh at 41, I felt something I hadn't experienced in almost a year: genuine optimism about the future. We'd all been wounded by Marcus's psychological warfare, but we'd survived it. More than that, we'd learned from it. Sarah had learned to trust her own judgment again. Emma had learned that families could change shape, but love remained constant. And I had learned that sometimes the most important battles are fought not with fists or weapons, but with truth and persistence and the refusal to give up on the people you love. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be more challenges, more difficult conversations, more moments when the scars from this experience would ache. But we'd face them together, as a family that had been tested and emerged stronger for it. As I helped Emma get ready for school, I thought about all the moments I'd missed and all the ones still to come. Soccer games and school plays, homework sessions and bedtime stories. The 1,000 small interactions that make up the relationship between a grandfather and granddaughter. Ready for school, beautiful girl? Ready, Grandpa Joe? Hand in hand, we walked out into the bright morning sunshine, toward a future that finally felt full of possibility again.